So we are joined today by Mr. Gregory Peoples, who is a student affairs professional with over 45 years of experience as a university administrator. His many accomplishments include establishing enrollment services department at Washtenaw Community College, creating the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender office and advisory board, and the Greek affairs office, as well as establishing the University Ombudsman office at Eastern Michigan University. As a member of the Ypsilanti community, Mr. Peoples has served on many local nonprofit boards, as well as on 3 local school boards. Washtenaw County My Brother's Keeper, founded by President Barack Obama, uses tools such as cross-sector partnerships, holding space for intergenerational connection, community-based planning and advocacy to transform the lives of boys and men of color in the county. We're glad Mr. Peoples is here to share his perspective on voting participation of young Black men in our county. We also have Mr. Ed Mr. Ed Golembiewski has served as the Washtenaw County Chief Deputy Clerk, Register, and Director of Elections since 2011. In this role, he oversees the Clerk and Register's office, general operations, and directs county election administration. This work includes coordinating election administration responsibilities with the county's 28 city, township, and village clerks, conducting election inspector and campaign finance training, processing candidate filings, preparing and distributing ballots, facilitating the canvass of election returns, and conducting voter and poll worker outreach. We appreciate his perspective on how voting works in our county.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Davonte Jackson is from Detroit Action, a grassroots community-based organization building power for workers and Detroiters of color. Detroit Action provides opportunities for individuals and families to develop as full human beings through leadership development workshops, organizer internships, direct action, and collaboration with allied organizations locally, statewide, nationally, and even internationally. We're especially grateful that you're here to share your perspective as part of Detroit Action's Voices of Detroit Youth and its nonpartisan voter registration efforts, education, and mobilization drives. And then lastly, I'll introduce our moderator, Professor Ellen Katz, who's from the School of Law, and she writes and teaches about election law, civil rights and remedies, and equal protection. Her scholarship addresses questions of minority representation, political equality, and the role of institutions in crafting and implementing anti-discrimination laws. She's the author of an important study about the Voting Rights Act, so she has a deep background on this subject. We're grateful to have her serving as the moderator of this panel discussion this evening. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I'm eager to hear from all our panelists. We're going to start and have each panelist address some of the same questions. And the first one deals with the question of voter suppression. We just saw in the film various tactics that the film characterized as amounting to voter suppression, from the closing of polling places to long lines to voter ID requirements, voter purges, rules about student voting, and now, of course, COVID. So to get us started, I'm going to start with Greg and ask him to talk to us about what voter suppression means to you as a general topic, and we'll ask each of the panelists to respond.
Well, thank you, Ellen. To me, voter suppression has to do with restricting opportunities and putting up obstacles to prevent people or various groups and individuals from having their voices heard, from having their intent counted, So that's what voter registration, voter suppression means to me. It's putting up obstacles and restrictions that prevent people from having their voices heard.
Davonte, would you like to take it from there and give us your perspective on what voter suppression means?
Yeah, so voter suppression to me is simply like barriers that are put in place, systemic forms and barriers that can appear in a physical way or in an industrial way that prevents, like Mr. People said, prevents people from engaging in the civic engagement process.
Great, yeah. Well, not great, but yes, as a definition. And Ed, from your perspective, if you could tell us how you understand voter suppression.
Yeah, I agree certainly with my two fellow panelists, and I'll just add that it can take the forms of official policy, like we saw in the video, photo ID laws, of course, being one of them, but it can also take the form of unofficial actions as well. Intentional propagation of misinformation. We're seeing a lot of that right now on social media and in other locations. And sometimes it's intentional, and sometimes it's also, folks consuming that information and sharing it on unintentionally or intentionally, continuing to spread that misinformation, which ends up suppressing the vote.
So I think that last point actually captures something that we see here in Washtenaw County. Much of the stuff that was talked about in the film are tactics not unheard of here, but also tactics that we associate actually with jurisdictions that were subject to the part of the Voting Rights Act that was invalidated in Shelby County. So maybe if each of you could speak, and maybe Ed will just pick up from where you just finished, what your comments about social media and misinformation might be a good way to start, but how voter suppression finds expression in a place like Washtenaw County. What tactics do we think are the ones to be on the lookout and the things we might be most concerned about?
Yeah, well, I think, the big topic right now is absentee voting. It is obviously the safest and most convenient and secure way that folks can cast a ballot during this upcoming election, in the context of the ongoing public health crisis that we're in. And of course, we in the election administration field are very much actively advancing and trying to encourage the use of absent voter ballots as a way to vote safely. We're seeing, and of course it's here in Washtenaw County, but it's everywhere, the misinformation about the fact that, or not the fact, but the misinformation about absent voter ballots being insecure or not being counted, or in other ways, meaning that a voter is, put on some sort of list or something like that. And I'll actually point to the fact that, and this is last month, this is 3 weeks ago, voters in the city of Detroit, many of them received a robocall that dealt with absent voter ballots and invoked racial stereotypes and discouraged folks from obtaining an absentee ballot, making false claims about what it actually means to be a voter that participates absentee. It's really, it's a shame to see it, but it's here and it's active in Southeast Michigan right now.
Gregory, do you want to pick up from there and talk about what you understand?
Well, so in terms of voter suppression in Washtenaw County, I will have to say that, well, to me, there's covert suppression. As Ed kind of mentioned, there's a lot of misinformation that's being given out now. I do remember recently there were calls placed to people saying that you should not seek absentee ballots because they're not going to be there's a greater chance for fraud there, and yada yada yada. Like, for example, I do know, and you might be able to help me with this. At one point in time, I think that they had, when you talk about voter suppression also has to do with making things available for people to vote. For example, I think at one point in time, there was a voting precinct on Eastern Michigan's campus. And At some point in time, during the time I was there, they removed that voting precinct from the campus in an attempt to keep the students from voting. Okay, and then there's also intimidation that people do. I think it was in 2016 during the Clinton and Trump the election that there were voter challengers behind voters to serve as intimidators, to intimidate like Latinx and people of color from voting. Like there were sayings that, well, you really shouldn't go in and vote because if you have any kind of outstanding record with the police, they will arrest you. And if you're a Latinx person, they may try to try to deport you. Things like that are things that they use to suppress people from and intimidate people from voting.
And Davonte, do you want to address this question?
Yeah, and so I think that to tap into both Mr. Peoples and Mr. Ed, because I didn't want to mess up the last name. To tap into what both of them are saying, we see like it in two forms, right? We see it in a physical manifestation, and then we see it in like the the verbal, where folks are actually just trying to scare you off. And so recently, in the primary, couple weeks back, here in Detroit, we had an issue like with the misinformation, and yes, there were people at the polls trying to like deter people from voting, but not only were there people there, but there were police presence, a heavy police presence. And so that's another way that voter suppression brings itself up and represents itself. What we understand is that for Detroit in specific, when we go to a polling location, normally you might see a police cruiser or two. But in this specific context, because of the importance of this election, we've seen state troopers, we've seen ICE, we've seen DPD, and we've seen we have unmarked cars which drive by, but you can always tell if you look inside of the windows. And at each polling location that we went to, because we were taking young people to go vote, we've seen this. And we recognize that this was not normal. And we also recognize that if folks in this community, right, if folks in this community, they're already afraid, they might smell like marijuana. So if I smell like marijuana, I won't go to the polling location if I know that every local agency is there, right? Just because of the stigma that's already on it, right? And so and that's just one example, right? That's just one example of young people who may have had a prior history or interaction with police, and so the trauma is reenacted when you drive by the polling station and you see all type of police presence, right? And so these are true and physical voter suppression deterrent tactics, right? And so we wanted to make sure that we lifted that up.
Can I add something else too? And again, I'll refer to Ed on this, but another attempt to what you can consider voter suppression is in Washtenaw County. I don't know how true this is, but on the east side of Washtenaw County, if you have fewer voting precincts or fewer machines available for the number of people who, particularly brown and black people who go to those polls, as opposed to on the west side of the county, where it's like they said in the movie, like on the and I'm not saying that this is true yet because I don't really know, but it could be on the east side you have concentrated efforts of black and brown people voting, versus on the west side where you have basically white people voting. and you have, like they said in the movie, the lines aren't very long. They have more than ample machines there. It's run smoothly. You can get a cup of coffee when you go in there, and it's a much more inviting thing. Again, I don't know that that's true, Ed, but that's something that could be done in terms of voter suppression.
So I don't know if we want to go straight to Ed on that, but I want to sort of ask in response to each of these observations and the examples of voter suppression that you've witnessed or identified or understand to be taking place, what can you do from the work you do, the organizations that you're each part of, to respond and counter the tactics that you're seeing? And so Ed, I know you might just want to respond to the last comment or just take it from there, sort of what we each can do in our respective roles when we encounter tactics that amount to the varied tactics that amount to voter suppression.
Yeah, well, I will respond to Mr. Peoples' expression there and say that what there certainly is discrepancy in resources among the communities on the east side of the county and on the west side, or the city of Ann Arbor, for instance. What that leads to is a disparity in the amount of labor, for instance, that can serve and staff polling locations or staff the clerk's offices that, especially during this election, are going to be processing incredible volume of absent voter ballots. They need to staff up, and some of them have the means to be able to do that. Some communities do, and some communities don't. We do have laws that dictate how many actual ballot tabulators, voting stations, and things are required to be in a precinct. And there's a 3,000 registered voter cap on the precinct size before you have to create another precinct. However, the reality is that in some cases, in some communities, it's more difficult to find polling locations, find places that are able or willing to serve as polling locations. And it's getting more and more difficult every year for communities to have access to the spaces that they have previously. Schools increasingly don't want to have voters coming in on election day when they're students for security reasons or other. There are locations that, for one reason or another, decide that they don't want the, maybe the inconvenience or something like that, to them of hosting a polling location. But generally speaking, the better resourced the community, the more opportunity and the more access to voting there is. Because, case in point here, where I am right now in the city of Ann Arbor, the city of Ann Arbor will be opening a satellite office to process voter registration and issue absent voter ballots. They're setting up numerous drop boxes for absent voter ballots. These are great things, and this is what we want every community to do as we proceed towards the November election. And some communities in Washtenaw County are not able to be able to do that. They just simply do not have the resources. Now, there have been grant funds that have been made available to communities here in Washtenaw County and everywhere around the state, and some communities are accessing that funding. But outside of those opportunities, these special grant funding opportunities, if you don't have the resources, you can't make voting as accessible everywhere as it is in some other places.
Okay, but Ed, who is responsible for providing those resources? I mean, what entity is responsible for making sure that those resources are available?
Well, we have a very decentralized system in the state of Michigan, whereby each individual city and township serves as its own, chief election administrator. So the city or the township clerk is tasked with administering the election therein. And cities and townships are asked to come up with their own resources, essentially, to be able to do things like staff polling locations adequately, and to be able to have enough staff in their offices to be able to do the work that's necessary. So, the cities and townships, of course, obtain funding from the state through state shared revenue and through taxes and other things as well. But it's a very decentralized thing where each city and township is sort of expected to self-finance a number of the election administration activities that they have to conduct.
And maybe I'll direct this to Davonte to start us or to continue this conversation and to talk a bit about not just what we can do to counter the suppression that we see in different places, but also one thing you're doing or various things you're doing from your position to encourage or to reach people who typically don't vote. And actually, I just see a message from Christine before they do it, and just to invite the folks who are listening to please write in the chat if you have any questions that you would like our panelists to discuss. But Davonte, if you could speak to this question, sort of how do you get folks who are discouraged, disengaged, feeling that their vote doesn't count or will not count to participate?
Cool. So firstly, here at Detroit Action and inside of our Young Voters Committee, we center the most impacted, right? And so that's one of our core values, which means that those who are most impacted by the issues that we're fighting for, those who are most impacted by the policies that we're either pushing or that we're fighting against, right? Those who are impacted by these things should be at the forefront in making the decisions about it. So keeping that in the mindset, right? And so when we engage folks like first-time voters, or we re-engage voters who may feel like their vote doesn't count, we talk to them first, not when we knock those doors, when we make those phone calls about knock, are you registered to vote, right? We talk to them, we get to know them. What are you impacted by? Like what issues are going forth? And so from there, we build it up. And so we go from talking about the issue to connecting the issue to mobilizing and then actually getting it done, right? And so we knocked your door, we talked to you, or we saw you in school and we was like, hey, you know, we see you eating lunch, or I see you because I'm a student. So it's peers organizing peers. And so I see you in school and I see you eating the lunch and I see that you're not liking it. So I talk to you about it, right? And not knowing at first that voting is related to the food that you're eating, you wouldn't want to vote. And so we're talking about it, and we're talking like, hey, did you really know that if you vote, or when your parents vote, you vote for the school board, you vote for different things that impacts this very meal. And so we're fighting for more funding for school. That's the issue. So we're connecting the issue to candidates. Like, does this person truly represents our values around fully funding public education, right? Does this person reflect our values? So we're putting people in place, we're putting people in place, and we're putting policies forth that reflects our values, that will bring real transformative solutions to us. And so young people are saying, now is not the time to just give away our vote, right? For a long time, we've just been giving our vote and just giving it out, and no one has ever worked for it. And so now what we're saying is, now we are engaged in this election. We are turning out to the polls, but we need a commitment. We need a commitment of trust and investment. And so some of the things that we're doing to engage people is that we're knocking doors, we're calling folks, but we're also holding meetings, we're holding committee meetings. We've done TikTok campaigns to show how easy it is to like fill out the ballot or get registered to vote. We do tutorials. We have our organization is co-sponsoring a PAC, which is called our COVID PAC, which is Political Action and COVID Crisis Team. And these are our PAC counselors of high school and college students who are all around the city of Detroit, organizing their peers and registering their peers to vote. And so we're using some tactics called Empower app. And so the Empower app is on your phone, and it syncs to the contacts that's on your phone. And I think it can tell you whether or not your friend or the person in your contact is registered to vote. And so what you'll do is you'll call them, or you'll have a conversation about the election that's coming up, or the importance of voting. You'll call them, you'll engage them, and get a commitment from them voting after that. And so we're really inside of this pandemic, the two pandemics that we're facing right now, which is COVID-19 and racial injustice. Inside of these two pandemics that we're facing, we're still encouraging folks that this model of organizing and this model of engaging folks has to be relational. What does that mean? That means that I have to take everybody to my house, in my house to the polls. I'm organizing the people in my house, right? And so not only am I organizing the people in my house, but I'm organizing my friends and my own interpersonal networks. And so those are some of the tactics that we're using to gain people, not only gain people, but actually mobilize them to the poll. And just really quick, one more thing. We really do value and invest in investing in our young people. And so we walked our young people through the process. We registered them to the vote. We educated them on what's on the ballot. We showed them some different perspectives. But not only did we do that, but on the primary day, we met up at our local high school, East English Village, which is my high school, the high school I graduated from. We met up, it's about 25 young people met up at East English Village, and we did voter registration checks in the car, socially distanced, had music playing outside, right? Engaging these people, engaging folks, right? And most of these are our peers. But we did voter registration checks going car to car, all the cars were lined up. And once everybody was checked, we said boom. And so since Detroit has local clerks, satellite clerk offices, we could all go vote at one place. And so the feeling and the energy of this group of people who've been into this process together, right? The intimacy of the relationship that we all have built together, and we have the car caravan going to WC3, which is a clerk's office, and not only did we walk them to the door, but some of us even voted with them, right? Engaging in that process together is how, and we're experiencing and creating like a tangible relationship with the community, and I think that's one of the most important tactics.
Yeah. Mr. Peebles, do you want to speak to that as well, how you encourage people who have not participated or have not participated perhaps in a while to engage at this moment when there's so many obstacles to actually securing a registration and actually voting, and all the discouraging factors that can be in place that would dissuade somebody?
Sure. Well, I just want to piggyback on what Davonte is saying, and what they're doing. It's a tremendous thing. My work is really focusing on my work is focusing on working with the Washtenaw County My Brother's Keepers and also the EMU Brotherhood Program. And it's really to try to get more Black males involved in the voting process, in the electoral process. We need to help young brothers understand that they have a very significant role in the outcome of the elections. And just like Davonte said, you know, we're trying to help them understand why it's important for them to understand the platforms that each of the candidates have. They're going to be voting for circuit judges, they're going to be voting for prosecutors, they're going to be voting for school board members, but they need to understand, because this election is, and people have said this before, I know you've heard this is a very, very important election. Probably one of the most important elections in their life, not only from the national level, but also from the local level. It's very important that they understand not only who these people are running, how they're going to help them, how they're going to help their brothers, how they're going to help their colors, how they're going to help their homies. So the people that they're electing have a major role in how this is going to impact the Black male for the next 20, 25 years. So we're trying to work on, as Davonte said, educating them, helping them understand when they go to the if they get absentee ballots, that's a significant thing. We want to try to help them understand what is on the absentee ballot, who their best candidate is going to be. You know, I would say right off the bat, for young people, particularly for young Black males, two of the documents that are very, very helpful for them are the League of Women Voters that puts out a magazine every election cycle that has the platform of most of the candidates who are running. And also there's and I think Christine mentioned it earlier, MC Can I Share has a marvelous website that talks about what they need to understand about the election process. So my focus really primarily is helping to work with young Black males to get them more involved in the education, or get them more involved in the electoral process.
Great, and I want to pick up sort of some of these comments about process and absentee ballots. And again, just to invite folks who are listening to put questions into the chat if there are things you'd like to direct our panelists to talk about. But in just connecting up some of the comments that were just made with Ed's original point about lack of confidence in mail-in ballots and this sort of expansion of people asking for absentee ballots at this point and seeking to vote that way. Maybe if you could speak a little bit about what can be done both in terms of the logistics of registering and acquiring an absentee ballot, filing an absentee ballot, and to ensure that folks are confident that that the process is going to be reliable and work.
Yeah, I mean, absent voter ballots have been available in Michigan for years and years. These are certainly, it's not a new phenomenon. What is new is the skepticism that we're seeing play out on social and other media and being propagated by, frankly, folks that should know better. Absent voter ballots are a secure way to vote. There is a request process that's thorough. Before an absent voter ballot is actually issued to a voter that's requesting it, it's verified, either their signature or some information from their driver's license in combination with other information that only the voter would know. In Michigan now, we're very fortunate. You can request an absentee ballot online, and I'll plug michigan.gov/vote right now because it's a one-stop shop, michigan.gov/vote. You can go there and register. You can go there to obtain an absentee ballot. You can find your polling location. And I will also point out that polling locations across the county will be open in November as they normally are, with protective measures in place to make sure that we can keep voters and poll workers safe. But you can still go vote in person if you'd like in November. But absentee ballots, from the point that the clerk's office, the city or township clerk, receives the application, they verify the ballot should be issued to this particular voter. They send them a ballot that's got a unique number on it. The voter receives their ballot, they make their choices on it, and they return it to the clerk's office in an envelope that they have to sign. And when the clerk's office receives that envelope back, they verify once again that the voter is indeed registered, that the signature matches the signature that's on the voter's registration record in the first place, and then they set it aside. And then it waits until Election Day. Right now, as it stands today, the ballots cannot be opened and processed until Election Day comes around, when a bipartisan board of election inspectors takes that ballot and opens it and makes sure that the stub number matches what was issued to that specific voter, and then they send it along to be counted. It's a secure process. We rely on paper ballots here in the state of Michigan because they give us a paper trail that can be audited, that can be recounted, and these are routine. It's absolutely not uncommon for there to be a recount conducted after a given election. We have ways of ensuring the integrity of absentee ballots. After election night, the returns that are processed by that bipartisan board of election inspectors goes on to the bipartisan board of county canvassers, and they review all of the returns to ensure that the numbers balance and things were done properly before they send those results and returns on to the state board of canvassers, which again is a bipartisan board. There are a number of checks and balances all along the way that we can point to and say that absentee voting is secure. And like my counterparts here have been discussing, education is absolutely critical, right? Reminding people and informing people about their right to vote absentee for no reason or any reason at all, and reminding them that this is a secure process that's available to everyone and they should take advantage of it. Take the opportunity to request a ballot. In Washtenaw County, we put together a voter education video series that is aimed at first-time voters or the less experienced voters. We've been very much trying to engage youth because the best predictor of voting is having voted. So, you vote the first time, more likely it is that you're going to come back and vote every single election. You need to stay in the habit, get in the habit, and stay in the habit. We've partnered with the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area to conduct voter registration drives on every single high school campus in the county. We've done that for several years running now. We're very proud of that partnership, but we're trying to keep the messaging as consistent as we can. That, again, you can request an absentee ballot for any reason or no reason. And you can register to vote up until and on Election Day, which is a dramatic and very positive change here in the state of Michigan as a result of the constitutional amendment that was adopted back in November of 2018. Voters have dramatically expanded rights, and we're very much trying to educate folks about that and remind them about the opportunities that they have.
Terrific. I want to ask the whole panel to speak a little bit. I want to just follow up with a couple of technical questions for Ed, but I also want the panel to speak to the way the pandemic affects how people vote, how people will think about vote, how we reach out to people. Normal or traditional ways of registering voters, of encouraging people, are more difficult because of the way we interact with one another and are supposed to interact with one another now, and sort of what mechanisms we can use to ensure that the distance that we need to maintain doesn't prevent us from reaching people who would otherwise be participate. I want to start with Ed, though, just to follow up on something he just said, to just ask us sort of a couple of technical questions. Your advice for people who apply for absentee ballots, if it doesn't show up, what one should do. I'm just going to ask a few of these because I think it would be useful for folks to know. Can someone still vote in person? Is that something you recommend? How does that work when someone shows up at the polls in person? If they find their name is not on the registration list, what advice, what do we do about that? And I guess for everyone also related to that, the logistics of making sure people understand how to mail, how to drop off a ballot once they have it by absentee. So Ed, why don't you get us started there?
Sure. Yeah, so first, you can request an absentee ballot right now. Ballots themselves are going to begin to be mailed out to any registered voter that's requested an absentee ballot beginning next week. So if you've already requested your ballot, expect it to be coming in the mail soon. If you're not sure, if you have submitted a request for an absentee ballot for the upcoming election, find that information at michigan.gov/vote. And if you haven't yet made your request, put it in at that time. After that point in time, you should expect to receive your ballot within, reasonable amount of time. Right now, of course, we understand the U.S. Postal Service has been operating at a much slower speed than we have seen them in the past. And we recommend, again, getting your absentee ballot application in as soon as possible. If it approaches, Election Day approaches, and you haven't received your absentee ballot, first, absolutely contact the city or township clerk's office. You can find your clerk at michigan.gov/vote. Yes, absolutely. If you have not received your absentee ballot that you requested, you can go to the polls and vote in person. The poll workers there will you on the voter registration. They'll find probably that you've been sent an absentee ballot, and then you have the ability at that point to complete an affidavit saying that you didn't receive it or didn't return it, and you can vote right then and there in the polling location. So unfortunately, we did see a relatively large number of voters doing that in the August state primary for the very reason that they had requested ballots that were very slow in arriving to them in the mail.
And my apologies, Mike.
So
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to. Oh, Des, go ahead.
You go. I was just going to read some of these questions. Is that okay? So we have a question here from Vina. What volunteer activities or organizations would make the most positive impact upon successful absentee voting?
Would any of the panelists like to respond to that?
Sorry, could you read the question again, Des?
Yes. What volunteer activities or organizations would make the most positive impact upon successful absentee voting?
Well, I'll take the opportunity here and just say that becoming involved in the administration of this election is incredibly important. There are opportunities to serve as a poll worker in many communities. Here in Washtenaw County, we've been recruiting for months and months, and I'm very pleased to see that we're getting to the point where we're meeting our recruitment goals, but there's still work to go. And work to do to recruit more folks to serve. And there's opportunities elsewhere, certainly, in Wayne County, in Oakland County, in Genesee County, in Livingston County, and all over the place. Folks are in need of poll workers to actually process the absentee ballot volume that we're going to see on Election Day. So if folks want to pursue those opportunities, which are paid, you can go to michigan.gov/democracymvp. Or if you're here in Washtenaw County, you can go to washtenaw.org/pollworker.
And that's to piggyback on this thing. That's really important for young people. I think you can be a poll worker as long as you're 16 or older. And I know a lot of young people did not have an opportunity to work during the summer to make summer job earnings or whatever. So this is a great opportunity for young people to become, and actually you become well educated in the process of what's involved in the whole voting process. So I think that's a great idea. Next question.
Yeah, there's another question in the chat also. Does the county do any purging of voters, as was discussed in the film? How do people get taken off the rolls in the state of Michigan or in Washtenaw County?
That's a great question. So in Michigan, counties have separate responsibilities that basically separate us from many other states where counties have a lot more election administration responsibilities. One of the responsibilities that we don't have is voter registration list maintenance. That falls to cities and townships and the Michigan Secretary of State's office. There are laws that control the process for removing a voter. Simply not having voted for a period of time is not one of the reasons why someone can be removed. What is if your city or township clerk's office sends you a piece of mail and it comes back to their office as undeliverable. What that will do is cause the voter to be placed on a cancellation countdown, and the clerk's office will be prompted to send a notice to the voter saying that they've been placed on this countdown and that their registration will be canceled after 2 full general election cycles has elapsed. So, 4 years basically from that time. The voter, if they receive that notice, has the ability to return it and say, no, I still live here and I still want to remain registered. And at that point, they would be removed from the cancellation countdown. If 4 years goes by and they haven't responded to that notice, at that point, they would be removed from the voter rolls. So, I mean, there's periods of time when the clerk's offices or the Michigan Secretary of State are more proactive, I suppose, in sending election mail out. This year being one of them. Obviously, absentee ballot applications went out to every single registered voter back in June. And it's possible that if voters' mail was delivered back as undeliverable to the Secretary of State's office or to the local clerk, that could cause them to be placed on this countdown. Now, I also want to point out that folks that are placed on that countdown and perhaps challenged can still vote. If you go to the polls and the poll worker there says, oh, your registration has been challenged, you still get to vote. You still get a ballot and you still get to cast it, just like everybody else in the polls. And one of the things that was also discussed was, I think Mr. Peoples brought up the fact that challengers are are around and certainly will be in November. And different parties, the two major political parties and interest groups can register in advance to appoint poll challengers. And in some cases, they are there to challenge voters' qualifications. They have the legal right to do that. If they are there on election day when you go to vote and they challenge your qualifications to vote, again, you still get to vote. You vote a challenge ballot that gets counted. It gets cast through the ballot tabulator just like every other registered voter. Poll challengers are also there to make sure that poll workers are abiding by the laws and the rules, and to make sure that that the activity in the polling location is happening appropriately. So there's challengers that can be, that represent different parties and are each other, a check and a balance on the activity in the polling location. Poll watchers can also be present as well. The election itself is a transparent and open process that anyone can go and observe. So we certainly encourage that to happen, and to make sure that folks are, not being intimidated. That folks are being allowed to pass through the line and get their ballot and move through the process, and also to help report issues if they notice them. If you happen to see that the line is, unreasonably long, please report it to the clerk's office or to the county clerk's office so that we can try to help and reduce those lines and move them efficiently and resolve any problems that might be happening in the poll.
Can I just make a point here? I think, Ed, did you say at one point in time that ballots were sent out to all Michigan residents? I want to make sure that people understand ballots were not sent out to all Michigan residents. Applications for ballots were sent out to all Michigan residents. And that's a big kind of bone of contention, but we really want people to understand that you have to apply for an you have to apply to get an absentee ballot. It's not automatically getting to you. You have to go through that process.
Right.
And I want to jump in because I know that we're coming up on time and we want to be respectful and of everybody's schedule tonight. Maybe one last question, and we'll let you, Davonte, answer it first because I know you have to duck out. You're a busy student. What's one piece of advice you would give to the members of our audience to help them fight voter suppression? What can we do?
Take people with you. Take people with you. I think like the more people we have at the polling place, one definitely does advances the position, but it also gives you some type of security. Like you said, poll watchers can be used as a great asset to help protect some folks, help protect folks, but also see what local organizations are around you. See what local organizations are around you and see what efforts they're doing to make sure that voter suppression tactics aren't happening. And then also take the liberty to actually educate yourself a little bit about what's going on currently around the climate, of the election, and then take somebody else with you. Take everybody with you. Meet me there.
I would say the best thing you could do is educate yourself in terms of the election process, but more importantly, who's running for what office and how that's going to impact you. Your vote is important. Don't let anyone tell you that your vote's not important. If you don't vote, you can't be heard. And if you don't vote, you shouldn't complain about the results of the election. So I would say, one, your vote counts. Everybody's vote counts. Two, educate yourself on the election process, particularly on who's running for what offices and what their platforms are and how that can impact you and your family.
Yep, and to that, sort of the see something, say something rule. If you see something that looks like it's incorrect or or wrong or a lie, say something about it. Fact check your social media posts that you're seeing, and if you see something that you know to be untrue, point it out. A lot of times, folks just will share things on that they haven't researched, and it's sort of human nature, I guess, these days, just to immediately reshare something that makes you feel a little bit shocked or outraged or something else. A lot of the things that you will see on social media between now and Election Day are simply not true. And as Mr. Peoples pointed out, becoming educated about the process itself. If you know it's not true, say it, and make sure that the folks that are in your network know it.
Thanks. I wanted to get that in before Davonte left, but Ellen, there's one more question in the Q&A, and this is it. Can a voter look at their driver's license to see what their signature looks like? Or might what the clerk's office has be their original signature when they had signed up to vote? And Carolyn notes, my son's signature has changed a lot since high school, and I'm concerned for others like this.
Yeah, so whenever you have a driver's license or a state ID transaction with the Secretary of State where they capture your signature, that is what's put on your voter registration record if you have a driver's license or state ID. You're not required to have a Michigan driver's license or state ID to be registered in the state of Michigan to vote. And if that's the case, if you don't, the clerk is taking your signature from the paper voter registration application that you filled out whenever that was. So if that happened to be a long time ago, it may be that your voter registration signature is, is a little out of date. You can certainly update it. And to the question though, can I look at my driver's license signature and see if that's the one? It is. If you have a driver's license or a state ID, the signature that's on file with the clerk's office is that same one. But again, if you don't have a Michigan driver's license or state ID, it would have been that signature that you put on that original paperwork that you signed and submitted at whatever point in time. And you can update it by simply filling out another voter registration application and sending it in.
Terrific. Well, I think that means we're out of time at this point. So I just want to thank our remaining panelists for participating, to Des and Christine for organizing this, and the good folks at AADL who put this all together for us. So thank you all.